Ladies and gents, this is the video you have all been waiting for. Boris is sat here outside of our unit and he is ready to get his turbo kit fitted. Boris is the car that we have created over on TikTok using the top comment on every episode of the Shitbox series. But now it is time for the big one, the mod that you have all been asking for, the turbo kit. Now, this has set me back thousands and the mapping is going to send me back even more. However, it's going to be so worth it because Boris, he deserves a turbo, right? I think this car deserves a turbo and I think everybody agrees because you have been spamming me, trying to get me to do this and I'm finally doing it. So let's get in the unit now and start fitting everything and making this Boris turbo dream a reality. Let's get into it. So ladies and gents, here it is, Boris's turbo kit. We have this insane tubular manifold. We've got this intercooler, QG18 DE injectors. We've got boost pipes, silicon hoses, a screamer pipe. We've got a wastegate in that box. We've got a clutch kit in that box. We've got a fuel pump in there. And we have obviously the T25 base turbo. Guys, this build is gonna be insane. Let's get into it. Now, the first job on the to-do list was to take the engine out of the blue Micra. Now, the reason why we were doing this was because this engine is mint. It's only done 38,000 miles. It's clearly been looked after. When we were working on it, every single bolt came off really easily, and it's a very healthy engine. So it's the perfect engine to turbocharge. So we now have the lovely 38,000 mile CG 10DE out of the car, and obviously this is going to go in Boris, but I think the plan is we're going to take the engine out of Boris, then we're going to put those parts on that engine, and then we're going to put that engine back in here. So that's exactly what we started to do. So my job was to begin taking the gearbox apart because we had to get that new clutch in. So as you can see, I am meticulously undoing some bolts and trying to get the gearbox loose. Now, here's a pretty amusing sped up video taken of me trying to take a bolt off with the socket that is switched to on. So let's see how long it takes me to realize. Still going, still going. Hey, he's figured it out. Finally, yep, you can take the bolt off now. After I had taken out all of the gearbox bolts, I had recruited Dan's help to help me pry the gearbox off. Now, this was a lot easier said than done. Dan was prying, I was lifting, and it took us a good while to get it off, but eventually we were successful. The next job on the list was to take the old clutch off. Now, as you can see, I had a lovely Ugga power tool to help me take off all of these little 10mm bolts. And after I had Ugga enough bolts, I managed to take off the clutch, pressure plate and grip plate. Now, the next job was taking off the old sump, and the reason why I was doing this was because there is a lovely new sump that came with the turbo kit, and if you've ever fitted a turbo kit before, you know the reason why you have to fit a new sump is because you need to run the oil return from the turbo back to the sump, because obviously the turbo needs oil. I dropped it in the oil. Oh no. Man. Oh, bro. So after that little incident with me dropping the socket into the oil, I then opted for another Ugga with a long socket extension to take off the rest of the sump bolts. And once I had taken off all of the sump bolts, I then began to pry open the sump with this hammer, and soon after I managed to take off the old sump. Whilst I was doing all of that disassembling of the blue Micra's engine, Dan had been getting Boris's old engine ready to be lifted out, and that is what we were doing in this clip, getting that engine out to make room for the new engine. We then took Boris's old engine, which had definitely seen better days and it was very unhealthy, and we put it on this tyre, and then after that we worked on taking out the injector rail. Now to do that, we took off the throttle body, which made the access easier, and then it was just a matter of undoing a few bolts and taking out the injector rail. So ladies and gents, here we have the old injectors. Now I'm going to compare them, put those there, with the new injectors, which are down here. Let's compare those. I don't know whether they're direct. I feel like we may have to put them on the old fuel rail. So that is exactly what we did. Now you're going to see here that I had a bit of trouble getting mine loose. And the reason for that, ladies and gents, is that I just didn't want to unleash my pure gym lad strength on these injectors. I was scared I was going to break them. Nah, the real reason why is because I was a complete wet wipe and I couldn't pull them hard enough. So I had to get Dan to do it. But yeah, eventually we managed to get the old injectors off the fuel rail and put the new QG18DE injectors back on. So the new injectors are in the engine now. We've put them back in, we greased them up. And because we didn't want to damage the rubber seals. So now that is back in, what's left to do is obviously we have to get the sump back on this engine. Both cars are now completely engine free. Boris is empty and the blue Micra is empty. But with this, obviously, we want this engine bay looking as sexy as possible. So we are going to be cleaning this and painting it as well. So, ladies and gents, that is exactly what I started to do. I took my trusty brush and my engine bay cleaner and I began to agitate the engine bay, and you can see how much dirt was coming off. It was filthy. I know I said I was going to paint it, but I ended up backing out of that because it would have been too much effort to mask everything. So we just gave it a good clean and called it a day. Now, whilst I was working on my skills to become a master detailer, Dan started to fit the manifold, which is absolutely beautiful. Look at these lovely brass bolts, it is just stunning. And then we worked on fitting the clutch, which was relatively easy, just some 10mm bolts.
And then it was time.
So Dan, being the absolute legend he is, started to fit the T25 base turbo, and after that I fit the wastegate, and then we test fitted the screamer pipe, and then we did actually bolt it on. However, we did do it the wrong way round. So you will see later on in the video, we do end up flipping the screamer pipe round so it's facing downwards because it was the wrong way. So ladies and gentlemen, look at the state of this engine now. We have the new clutch on, the new CG Racing clutch. We've got the screamer pipe on, which is going to be insane. That's going to be coming out of the bonnet. As we just discussed, it won't be doing that, unfortunately, quite yet. We've got this insane tubular manifold, as you've seen now on the engine, looking amazing. And the bad boy turbo is on as well. So all we have to do now is get the sump on, and then we also have to get the exhaust on, and then I think we're ready to drop it back in the car. So the next job was to fit the sump. Now, to ensure that the seal wouldn't leak oil, we had to take off the remains of all of the old kind of sticky stuff with this scraper, and once we had done that, we could fit the lovely new sump. After that, we took out Boris's old exhaust, and then we worked on fitting the oil feed and oil return lines, and then we worked on fitting the gearbox back onto the engine with that lovely new clutch inside. After fitting the downpipe off camera, we were then ready to get the engine in the engine bay, and as you can see, I was also doing some TikToks at the same time, but Dan did most of the work when it came to getting the engine kind of fit snugly in. Now, after we had tightened up all of the engine mounts, we then worked on fitting the intercooler and all of the boost piping. Now, guys, when I say this stuff fit like a glove, it fit like a glove. You could tell GizFab have really worked hard on making this kit fit well, and the work's paid off. We were just fitting this kit and it was so easy. It took us about 10 minutes to do, so big up GizFab. But yeah, we got that all fitted and it's now really starting to come together. So we have come to the pretty sad realization that the screamer pipe is actually supposed to face down on this kit, because if it faced up, it would actually crash into the rad. So for now, it's going to be facing down, but don't you worry, we're going to get that facing up very soon. We're going to get a new one sorted out. But for now, it's going to have to face down, unfortunately. So I need to apologize to you guys quickly, because after we did the intercooler and the boost piping, we didn't really film much of the rest of the process because we were in such a rush to get this done by the next day. All we really did was fit the alternator, get all of the cooling system connected up, fitted the battery back in, and got all of the oil lines connected up, all of the boring stuff like that. So I didn't think you'd be too interested in seeing that anyways. Now, once we had got all of this stuff fitted, we were basically ready to get the engine started. Obviously, we hadn't sorted out any of the mapping yet, but here is the video that was filmed on my phone of the first start. Joe, do the honors. Yes! Come on, it starts! So, we'd started the car, but going back to why we were in such a rush, the mapping that I'd booked in like 3 months in advance was the next day. I'd cut it so fine. So we literally got Boris strapped to the back of a recovery truck with no exhaust and no intake for the turbo. We went along the M4, around the M25 and then up the M1 to R Engineering, where we got all of the mapping, loom and ECU work done. Here he got an EMU Classic ECU fitted with a custom loom and all of the mapping done, and he was mapped to 114 brake horsepower on the hub dyno. So once we'd done all of this work, we took Boris on the back of a recovery truck again to get him back home, but my initial plan was to drive him back. But the combination of the fact that the M25 was basically a car park due to the fuel crisis and the fact we didn't have an exhaust or an intake for the turbo meant that it was probably a more sensible idea to get him recovered back home. So, ladies and gents, the last thing you would have seen on this video is the turbo kit being completely fitted. Now, as many of you may know, the turbo kit didn't actually come with an exhaust or a filter for the turbo. Obviously, we don't want any rocks or any particles getting in the turbo, so we need to get a filter on it, and we also obviously need to reinstate Boris's side exit exhaust. I gave you guys the choice on my TikTok as to what side exit tip we put on Boris, and you lot chose this tip, which is the double blue exhaust. It was option A, and yeah, so that is going to sit somewhere up there. There's going to be a little bit more that way, but you get the picture. There is the pipe we need to connect up. We're going to connect it all the way along here and then round to the side exit. So, ladies and gents, the exhaust is now on Boris and looking very nice indeed. It looks like Lightning McQueen's exhaust in my opinion. However, that is not all what we're doing here at the exhaust company. As I'm sure you've just heard, we are still working on the car because Josh, the absolute legend, has been fitting this insane bit of induction or intake for the turbo so that we don't break it. Doesn't that just look so sexy? I actually can't get over how mint this intake is. It's literally connected down to the turbo down there, and they've done a load of welding and got this absolutely monstrous intake on there, which looks amazing. I absolutely love it. Guys, you smashed it. This is beautiful now. So, ladies and gents, that is the build. We have finished pretty much. I mean, it's a project car. It's never gonna end, but have a look. Isn't it just gorgeous? It looks gorgeous, it sounds gorgeous. I absolutely love it. It was expensive, but I think it was very worth it. I think this was probably the best mod we've done to Boris. I mean, undeniably the best mod we've done to Boris. The results speak for themselves, and you will see how this thing drives in the first drive video that is coming very soon. But as I said, this did cost me a lot of money, so if you wouldn't mind liking, commenting, subscribing, do what you've got to do, and yeah, that would really help me out. But yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next video.